So guys, thanks very much for the interview.
Your pleasure.
Say hi to the PS3 Attitude readers and introduce yourselves, if you will.
Well, hello to the PS3 Attitude readers. My name is Patrick Redding. I'm the narrative designer on Far Cry 2. I'm at Ubisoft Montreal.
My name's LP. I'm the producer of Far Cry 2, and we're all at the Montreal studio.
Excellent. Now, what makes Far Cry different from all other FPS titles that are out there?
You want to take that one?
No, you go for it.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, obviously, it's an open world game, and open world shooters, of course. I mean, people have taken shots at trying to do this, no pun intended. And always the problem or the challenge is, how do you reconcile the desire to have kind of a sandbox experience where the player is able to kind of do what he wants to do, use the elements that he wants to use, kind of let the game progress in his own way, with the kind of the really directed sort of kind of mentality that goes along with playing a first-person shooter. And our approach was really to try to fill the game world up with interesting systems that the player can use in a lot of creative ways to sort of express himself. And it sounds strange to talk about expressing yourself when your main form of expression is with a gun, but in fact what we do is create a lot of systems that still work within the first-person shooter dynamic, and kind of extend it and expand on it and kind of create interesting effects that the player hasn't seen before. People talk an awful lot about our propagating fire system. So obviously, a flamethrower is the logical way to go with that, but there's also lots of other elements in the game world that can help to create fires.
Yeah, because the way we see it, we're giving the players ingredients and they can play around with it. The fire's a good one. You can plan it, plan your approaches. We give the tools for the player to observe, to explore, to really push the boundaries of that open world. But at the same time, people expect some things out of an FPS, and we're not reinventing the genre of certain things that we consider conventions of FPSs. So, the shooting's pretty much the same, but we've added, a few layers and a lot of cool features like, dynamism, everything's dynamic in the world, things reacting to the wind. We've got all the weather effects, the 24-day night cycle. So as an ingredient, the 24-day night cycle is one of them. You can change time. By changing time, you can adapt your strategies to how you want to raid a camp. If you want to do it at night, the gameplay is completely different. So just all the different ingredients we're adding into the game changes the way of playing. And we're talking this all the time. I mean, I think the players, it will be impossible for a gamer to play the same game, the same way as his friend or his buddy. Because, when you play more linear shooters, you can talk to your friends, hey, that guy behind that tank, when you shoot, when you turn and he's there, I have a hard time killing that guy. It's impossible in our game. We haven't talked about AI yet.
Not too much, no.
Our AI honestly, I think on that front, I think people will be extremely impressed. It's totally systemic. They are extremely surprising in their behaviors because they're pretty smart, and they tend to do stuff that the player actually will learn from what they do, to be a better combatant on the field.
I mean, the other thing too, is that because it's a shooter and the primary emphasis for the player is going to be on taking action in the game world with his weapons and by maneuvering around and doing all the things you normally do in a shooter, we needed to be sure that our systems for delivering the story and for delivering the kind of mid-level gameplay and high-level gameplay took all of those inputs from the player and kind of tracked those inputs. And having a dynamic AI and a systemic AI that's able to react in a really kind of responsive way to what the player's doing is kind of part and parcel of that. So it's valuable to us both from a combat perspective, but also in terms of being able to say, well, rather than having some big scripted event that can only happen one way at this point, at this exact choke point in the game world, which really feels funny in an open world, what we can say instead is, there's certain things that we would like to be able to tell the player, certain kinds of information we want to deliver that will help him progress his story. So what we can do is give that to any of the AI in any of the locations that the player happens to be, and they'll be able to deliver that. So really these become very powerful tools for us. It's a way to kind of help bring together both of these elements, the sandbox element as well as the shooter.
And those ingredients give the player an extremely high level of liberty. I mean, he can attack 360 degrees. We've got over 30 weapons in the game. We're at 34 now, and he can have a kit that's more stealthy or more Rambo style, so he can choose his way of playing, which is it's fun, Because most games they force you into a style, and for us it's kind of like, well, pick and choose and try, what's best suited for you, and where you have the most fun, and it's what we're pushing basically.
I mean, the atmospheric effects do look amazing, but what real-world features of the weather can players expect to come across, and how's that going to affect them in the game?
In terms of weather specifically, well, we have, essentially, what the weather is doing for us is mainly altering lighting effects and visibility effects, right? So, for example, you'll definitely notice it if it becomes overcast and cloudy and it starts to rain. It's going to affect the player's ability to see, but it's also going to affect the overall visibility in the game world. Fog levels are going to come up, all of these kinds of factors that have a play on the sensors.
In the open world, all of a sudden feels a little bit more
claustrophobic. And similarly with wind effects, our wind, for example, we can support, and we've shown it a few times in our tech demos, we can support like a hurricane strength gale force wind. And when you start seeing like chunks of tree being torn off by wind effects, it's an impressive feeling. It's also a scary feeling because you realize that you're in a dangerous situation. That as you start to use things like grenades in order to destroy, shanty towns, there's a good possibility that a giant sheet of aluminum is going to come and hit you in the head. And that can also be a very powerful weapon as well. So.
And you can plan your attacks with fire, with the wind.
Fire's a big factor.
Fire propagation, the wind will push the fire in one direction. So you got the tools to know which side the wind's coming from, and that way you can plan your attacks. There's the rain as well. If it rains, you're going to have a hard time, lighting fires.
Absolutely.
So it's, the elements are there like they are in the real world, and they're affecting the players', strategies.
A big priority for us was, we wanted the game to feel realistic, and we wanted it to be immersive, but we didn't want those things just for their own sakes, to show how clever we were or how awesome our technology was. It really needed to be there to kind of serve the player's ability to sort of read the world around and be able to use his normal kind of human intuition, as opposed to just his gamer's intuition, to be able to understand how the systems in the game work. And so that means, sure, maybe we could have added like a really complex windage system so that if I'm sniping from 200 meters away, I have to calculate wind and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, that's not what our game is about. And so what we really try to do is stick with forces and effects that the player could realistically understand as a human being walking down the street.